Bush Radio.
Bush Radio. Bush Radio.
Bush Radio.
Your real talk radio.
State Affairs with Edmund Obilo is live. Stay tuned.
Ayisha has mentioned the power of religion, especially in a country like Nigeria. President Donald Trump's visit to the St. John Paul II National Shrine, where he displayed the Bible, talks of the question of religion. Ayisha, what has Bible got to do with this in the United States?
It's a manipulation. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't watch TV that much, but I've seen a few takes which even said that he was holding the Bible upside down. It's just signaling. He's signaling to his base. What was more appalling, apart from the fact that he was signaling to his base, as people pointed out, he didn't go there to enter the church or worship. He didn't go there to read a message from the Bible, a passage, something that would give peace and give healing and calm. He just went there for a photo op. For me, it's less important what he does, but for me, it's more the people that he's signaling to, why that's so important. You know, why do you let religion, or why do you let the illusion of religion be what matters so much to you? What about spirituality? And so for me, maybe it goes back to the colonization of our minds that Yejide keeps talking about. It's not just our structures, but it's also the colonization of our minds. Arguably, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, were foreign to Africa. We had our own religion, but we've taken these religions, we've made them ours, and we've used them to keep our minds sort of imprisoned and refusing to allow ourselves to think more logically. And so while I was listening to Jai talking about, how, organizing will come before unity, and I like that. The practical side of my brain says, yes, you organize and you build unity. But if you look at Nigeria, for example, and see how difficult it has been for us to organize successfully. I mean, the last time we organized successfully was 20 years ago when the results of fighting to push the military out finally happened. That's the last time I think we've organized successfully. We've had pockets of resistance with maybe the Occupy movement and the Bring Back Our Girls movement that has taken a few years. But other than that, anything significant to cause that kind of shift, the revolution that you're talking about, we haven't had that. So you have to ask yourselves, why is it so difficult to bring people together? And I think one of the reasons why is, even when we want to organize in Nigeria, we try to organize around ethnicity and religion. So you have these groups on Facebook or WhatsApp groups. I think WhatsApp groups have become really a pain in the behind. But WhatsApp groups where they're organizing and it's like, oh, please bring 3 youths from the north. And I'm like, is it that you want northern representation, or do you want values? Should you be organizing around north, south, Christian, Muslim, or should you be organizing around values? Because if you're not organizing around values, you can never build any unity. So for me, it's Trump and the right wing are, manipulating religion for their own purposes. But you find it's working because you have many Christians in Nigeria who follow Trump without thinking. They don't care that he calls Africa shithole countries. He doesn't care that, he says mean things about black people. The fact that he's right-wing, Bible-thumping, Bible-wielding is more important to them than anything else he does. It's more important to them than his policies. Again, I bring it down to our education. Our education curriculums are not thorough. We're not raised to question. We're raised to be sheep. And it just follows that structure of colonialism.
Does that mean that Donald Trump is right about shithole?
No, it doesn't mean that he's right. It just means that he knows that he can get away with saying certain things and he will not be challenged, even from people who come from the countries that he's described as shitholes. He knows, and he knows that the Bible, that Bible, that pretending to be holy when we know from his personal life, from his anecdotes, from the things he said with his own lips and his own mouth, that he's anything but holy. But he knows that just pretending to be is enough to unite Christians around the world.
Let's look at it from this point. Remember, love does not win election in your country. And that is the defeat of love. If love is defeated, can that country be described as a shithole country?
Well, I describe the country in the words that we've been using to explain why our countries are not progressive, that we're still caught in the throes of colonialism. We're really not free. We think we're free, but we're not. And the reason why love will not win elections in Nigeria or in Senegal or in Kenya or Sierra Leone, because I've gotten enough feedback from different Africans across the continent who say that what I've explained about party politics in Nigeria is the same as what party politics is in many of these countries. So the reason why we will not be free, why we will not let love win, is because the structures are determined to keep us this way. And so if we keep trying to work within the systems, as AJ has said, you find that what I say to people is a sausage making factory. If you put anything into it, it will come out looking like a sausage. We have to change the factory settings. I don't believe anymore in saying let's walk through the system. I respect people who say they want to do that, but it's not for me anymore. For me, it is to build different systems, dismantle the existing ones, and replace them. But if you keep trying to work within the structures, then love will never win elections. Money will keep winning elections. Violence will keep winning elections. Being able to appoint who is the INEC chairman, the head of the election management body, those are the things that will win elections.
Okay, let's look at Dr. Lam Adesina. The traditional politicians in Nigeria over the years have held the country to ransom.
As far as I am concerned, I'm educated. I'm able to hold a job. And the only reason why I've gone into politics is to see life more abundant for my people, really. So you may say that the so-called traditional politicians in Nigeria, they've never had a job. Some of them do not have the necessary education. That doesn't mean that they didn't go to school, but you have got to have the necessary competencies and capability to be able to actually serve your people before you can serve them. So the answer to your question is, it depends on the way you define it. But the taste of the pudding is in the eating. I think I've got the necessary education, the necessary experience to be able to serve my people, and that's why I'm in politics.
The present political class in Nigeria, is that class capable of redeeming the African? Remember, your country is the capital of poverty in the world, and we are talking about the black man.
I don't think so. The issue for me has always been simple. While we talk about colonialism and so on and so forth, at the end, we have moved on. It's Africans that are governing Africans. At this particular point in time in our history, do we still want to continue to say that we don't know what is good for us? That has always been my issue. As far as I'm concerned, there's a difference between what is going on in the United States right now and what is going on in Nigeria. At the end of the day, a Nigerian is the president of the country. Nigerians are governors of all states in the country. The question is, how many years after independence are we still not able to know what is good for us as a country? A couple of years ago, like Ayisha said, we said we didn't want a military dictatorship anymore in Nigeria. We came together, we pushed the military dictators away. Just about a couple of years ago, we said we didn't want a particular party to continue to rule Nigeria. We came together, we selected another president. If we know what is good for us a couple of years ago in Nigeria, and we pushed dictatorship away, why is it now that we don't know what is good for us? I think I'm sick and tired of us blaming others for our predicament. It is our responsibility as Africans to make our countries all over Africa good enough for us. What is it we don't have? We've got the brains, we've got the natural resources, we've got people who have got the capacity and the capability, but we are still not able to give ourselves what is good for us. I don't get it.
Jayegaskia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here and I'm trying to get it.
Okay. Yejide has mentioned colonialism. She keeps repeating the consequence of capitalism. Now let me take you into some words of Professor Ayisha Osori in one of his papers, where he states that the crisis of contemporary African states is the struggle between the forces of colonialism and decolonization. He avers that states' second independence aims at decolonization, something first independence failed to do. What do you think?
To a very large extent, I am in agreement with that characterization and analysis. And I think that just to buttress the points that have been made earlier, it's important to get something very clearly. And I'm going to use Yejide's example of Obama to actually respond to what Dr. Lam said. Obama was the representative of a movement, but it was not the representative of the black movement or the radical movement. Let's get that very clearly, okay? So he came into office and implemented, the policies of that movement. For me, the challenge with that is also that it goes to underlie this, so that those who have made a revolution, they merely dig their own graves, and at the end of the day, pile up more complexities for the people. That's what happened. You raised so much hope, so much expectation, but nothing fundamentally radical really happened. And so we are back where in fact, I think that the Obama presidency contributed to the nature of the anger right now in the U.S., in the sense that those were unfulfilled then, and that therefore somebody more brazen is there who has no niceties and is not diplomatic, and so it contributed to that. But having said that, now coming back to Africa and coming back to how do we make change happen, and I quite agree with Lam that we cannot continue to blame others. But the issue is this: others represent movements. We have the African leadership, and that's the point that Ayisha was making, that the struggle between decolonization and colonization. So you have a movement represented by certain aspects of the ruling class who believe that the existing structures now, because it meets their own immediate pecuniary interest, is the best. And you have those who say this is not the best. Let's ask this question, a very fundamental one. As the African state and the Nigerian state, has it changed fundamentally from the pre-colonial state in terms of what its nature was meant to do, in terms of the way it pacifies, the subjects, not citizens? That's colonialism, and we need to decolonize.
Capture the state and destroy the people. Is that a point you are making?
Absolutely.
Is Yejide there? You've listened to everybody. You might want to respond to each of them.
Oh, I've been writing notes, and hopefully I can do it in a very quick fashion. But I just want to, I really appreciate what Ayisha was saying, what Jai is saying, even what Dapo and the other doctor is saying as well, because it really represents the split in what the split between the old and the new. And the split between colonialism, neo-colonialism, which is white power and blackface that Jai is talking about, and the reshaping of society. And so we have to initially say, when Dapo was talking about Obama and him representing the interests of the American people, you're right, because American people, the American concept of freedom is about oppression and exploitation. That was what the country was founded on. So yes, Obama represented that to the T. Nobody on the continent of Africa should be without and living in poverty, but we can't do that because of the neo-colonial leaders that are on the continent right now who are facilitating the theft and exploitation that is happening right now. Colonialism, even in the so-called transfer of power that came after flag independence, they killed revolutionaries. And so they put in place the same people that they've been training for decades before they gave over flag independence to sit in place to make sure that the same old way of things happening will remain the same. And anytime
that we challenge that. There is going to be a clash between the new and the old. We saw that with the war, the struggles for independence in Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique, and all of the other places that actually had revolutionary struggles in order to shift from this colonial domination to a situation where we had redistribution of wealth, where African people can be free. But the only thing with that is that if we did that within the concept of a state, within the national independence, a narrow view, and there's no place in Africa that's going to be free. No one state in Africa that's going to be free if we are not organizing across borders. If we continue to make it a national question, we will be isolated. And I subscribe to our own theory, which is African internationalism, a theory that is about changing the trajectory of African people, putting forward the leadership of the African working class, because we are the ones who really know what's happening and are feeling the fire. And so if we can say that we want clean water in our town, and we can work toward making that happen, because we know that everybody in that town is dealing with the question of not having clean water.
I am this journalist that is optimistic about the future of Africa. So I come on radio and I tell the people listening to me that someday we'll build aeroplanes, we'll build our brands of cars, we'll build ships that will sail on the Mediterranean. They say it is not possible. Is Africa doomed? Dakwa Rotifa, is Africa doomed?
I'm not given to so much pessimism, even when sometimes it's staring us in the face. But you can always be wrong on hope. As long as we stay here and things are still happening, we have to keep up hope. Well, so quickly let me say this. We talk about colonialism, neocolonialism, and all that stuff. The bottom line is there are people who are privileged, who are taking advantage of this situation that we're in, and some of them will prefer that we remain the way we are. So my own thinking always has been guided is, what can we change? The little macro level that we can change that can start to have impact on our society. I describe myself as advocate for good governance, social justice, and rule of law. See, there's a lot of things that are happening in America. Right now, things are not going on well, and we're all frustrated by it, we're angry about it. But they also have something that have gone right for them, and that is rule of law. Now, it's under attack now, I get that. But we in Africa, we still have utter disgust for rule of law, for social justice. I keep telling people, the more we can start to vote against people, politicians, and vote them out, the power inherent in the hand of a voter, that it can make that change. We start to shake up things. It's not until we have the best system can be bastardized, can be corrupt, can be made corrupt by these politicians. So let's keep preaching to our people to see the power they hold in their hand, that they can start to effect change.
Have you realized that you vote against them, they still win?
Well, I get that. We will get there. Now, let me quickly give an example. Sheyi Makinde got there, he projected some change, and your people, they reacted and then they voted him. Now it's becoming disappointing. So let people continue that tempo. If it's not satisfying, let them vote him out. Or if he changes or shake things around, let him vote him back again. So I just want us to simplify it for common people, rather than be talking about big things, economic models, and all those things which leave people of Ngbidi, people of Karanamuda, who don't understand all that.
Has free market not run into crisis? Has COVID-19 not exposed the world? If COVID-19 has done that, what is the future of Africa? Are we walking towards a new world order? Dr. Lam Adesina.
I think COVID-19 has changed everything. The key point is, what is it changing to? I've always mentioned in my conversation with colleagues that events sometimes change the course of the political life of people. And I think if we take the example of Nigeria now, the so-called rich people will think twice before flying abroad for medical treatment, because they can quite easily come abroad and probably catch COVID-19. So that may well lead to us having a better healthcare system that is going to be usable, not just for them, but for everybody else. So that is very, very important. And I think for someone like me, who, yes, I work in the United Kingdom, but Edmund, you know that I'm very, very localized when it comes to Oyo State politics. My take of it is, if people get the government they deserve, it is the same people who are supposed to be governing us, and we have got to have the right frame of mind in terms of what is it that we want. If I give you an example, Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years. He was a member of the ANC. After Nelson Mandela, you have had Mbeki, you have had someone else, and you have got Ramaphosa there. Are they providing the basic essentials of life for the majority in South Africa? So the answer is no, from my point of view. So we need to think deeply, we Africans.
Are you saying we are doomed?
I am not saying that we are doomed. I am saying that we need to stop blaming other people for our predicament.
So what is your projection of Africa in the next 50 years?
I think events will force us to make progress. It may still take a little bit of time. Events like this pandemic issue will force the so-called ruling class to look inwards.
Ayisha Osori, do you see a new world order? Do you see a new Africa emerging, post-COVID-19 Africa?
Well, like everybody else, I want to be optimistic. So yes, you do hope that this is a crisis that we'll take advantage of and emerge from better, more equitable, more inclusive. We'll look at our what the impact of globalization and has been so far. But if I just use the response of our African leaders, for example, as a test case for how things will look post-COVID, I would say that nothing much will change, because in majority of our countries, we've seen the same reliance on a, unruly security force, excessive force. At a particular time, there were more people that were dead from policemen trying to enforce the lockdown in Nigeria than had actually been killed by COVID. But I'm still hopeful. I think that charity begins at home. I'm still trying to link this conversation with Black Lives Matter movement. I think charity begins at home. If we don't get our acts together, then we're unable to really build solidarity and provide support for Blacks all over the world, Blacks and brown people all over the world. I like the optimism of the fellow panelists that think that it's as simple as just voting. I mentioned a structure and a system that's designed to keep things the way they are. When people complain in America that the system is working the way it's designed to work, I feel the same way about Nigeria, that it's working the way it's designed to work. So just merely voting is not going to be enough for us, but we're going to have to insist on constitutional and electoral reforms that will make our votes actually count. Right now, our votes don't count. I don't care what anybody says to me. It's the only explanation for how dismissive the people in power can be about the majority of the people. That's the only explanation, that they know how they win their votes and they know that they don't really need us. What they need us for is for the charade, for the show of voting, for the show of elections, but they do not need us to keep them in power. The same way they know that our votes will not get them out of power, which is why they can perpetuate what they do. So I think that's the first step. Charity begins at home. For us to be able to worry about our Black brothers and sisters around the world, we have to fix ourselves first. Finally, I think we need to put more emphasis on Pan-Africanism. We really need to get our acts together as a continent. We need to use the opportunity of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement to build alliances, to remove fake borders. And then from there, we can build Black internationalism.
Black internationalism. That strikes at my next question. From Congo to Burundi, from Nigeria to Mali, it is about violence, poverty. You go to the Caribbean, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago. There's no super flying black man's country anywhere in the world.
I I am an African internationalist. So we have Africans who are organizing for United Socialist Africa in the Bahamas. We have Africans who are organizing for United Socialist Africa in the United States, in England, in Congo, in Cameroon, in Kenya, South Africa, and everywhere else that we can get more Africans involved. So I'm optimistic about that. And what that looks like in terms of on the local scale is that we have an organization like mine. So first of all, I'm a member of the African People's Socialist Party, the leading Central Committee member. But my responsibility within that party is to organize African National Women's Organization. And there's other mass organizations within our movement. So we go out into the world and build our local branches on a community by community basis that deal with all of the issues that are impacting our people. So we want an annual branch in Nigeria and in different states of Nigeria. We want to have the party all over the world. All of these things put together is going to build the capacity of our people to really struggle for the actual revolution, a destruction of all of these artificial borders in the continent of Africa, and the unification of African people everywhere.
So as we round off, Jaye Gaskia, can you tell me, are we approaching the end of capitalism? You are a socialist.
I think that what has happened in recent history, in the last, over the past several decades, but over the last 3 decades, is that we see more and more the exhaustion of capitalism, the way capitalism has been projected as that system that solves all the problems of humanity. We see it challenged more and more by the crisis of capitalism itself. And COVID-19 is a clear-cut example of it. Even the so-called social welfare states of Europe and America, we still saw the impact of COVID-19, clearly showing the, manifestation of the inequality, deep inequalities in those societies. So yes, I have no doubt that capitalism is not the solution, that capitalism has to be supplanted, that capitalism has to be overcome. I have no doubt that capitalism will go. I have also no doubt that that the future of Africa is bright. But the issue is this: if we do not organize, and we do not mobilize, and we do not build, these things are not going to collapse on their own. And if they do collapse on their own, what will happen is a catastrophic crisis. It's not going to be a transformative crisis. So we need organization, and that organization is important. And I need to also stress this point. Optimism is good, but organized optimism is the one that can lead us to where we want to get to. And what I'm hearing is that there are also 2 ways in which we can organize. That's what I'm hearing. So the first is that, you see, we can organize in a manner that we build collective action, okay? But we can also organize in a manner that we encourage individual action. Both are organizing, but the one that is ultimately transformative in a society like ours is the one that actually, energizes collective action. Because it's only in the context of collective action that our primordial differences can become overcome by the fact that we are acting together.
Thank you.
And that's the way I see our way forward.
Thank you, Jaye Gaskia. I must say I appreciate your appearance on this edition of State Affairs. Jaye Gaskia, thank you for featuring.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I must thank Ayisha Osori for featuring on this edition of State Affairs. Ayisha, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the panelists for all the insights. Very enriching conversation.
Ayisha, did you worry about the COVID-19 pandemic in America? Because you saw what happened after George was killed. Everybody came out. You started asking, what happened? I thought Americans were hiding.
Well, we'll know when the numbers keep going up. I guess right now nobody's checking those numbers, but you could ask the same thing about Nigeria. Everybody's roaming around happily. Even when our masks are wearing us, we're not wearing our masks.
Good.
So.
Yes,
thank you. Yejide Rumila, thank you for featuring on State Affairs.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it to have a really good discussion with everyone.
And Dr. Ayobami Lamadeshino, thank you for featuring on State Affairs.
Thank you, Edmund. Thank you to everybody, and have a nice day.
And I hope the numbers are reducing in the UK.
Yes, it is. It is reducing now at the moment. Hopefully it will stay like that.
Dakwa Rutifa.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody for your insightful contributions. And in the United States, we hope we get over COVID-19. It's one of the viruses, but we have other viruses we're fighting here. And God help us. There's a limit to how much you can restrict people. I think that's why people cashing on this protest that they just want to get out. And that's what we're seeing now. But we just hopeful that it won't escalate the level where we are now. Scary.
Are you part of the protest?
So there are some of us that cannot be on the street because of other things we engage in. And but my son was, and as a young black kid, we still always have to encourage them or warn them to be careful. That's one of the hazards of parenting here, especially in the black community.
I mean, we say colonialism is the virus.
Oh.
And colonialism brings up all of these other things, whether it's Ebola, SARS, or COVID-19.
Subsets of the main virus.
You just added one to it now, which I'll take to people. You mentioned colonialism as one of the viruses here. I think we were looking at two, coronavirus and the virus of the right wing.
Thank you.
When nature calls, we answer. Bush Radio.